Yeah, we'll jump right in. You've been working with the FDA group for quite a while now. How long? When did you actually start with working with us?
I was I was thinking about that the other day. It was
Yeah,
well over 10 years ago.
I was gonna
I
say
was
yeah.
introduced to Nick by somebody that knew him when I was
Hmm.
on a site consulting,
Yeah,
and that person I became friendly, and then I called Nick, and it just kind of, I get a small job here, a bigger job there,
right.
and but probably 10 or 11 years right now.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of towards the beginning of when it all started. Then you've been
I
along for the
believe so.
ride for most of the time now. Nice. What were your first impressions of Nick? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I've been here for 10 or 11 years. They were great. I mean,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
no,
Excellent.
he had a very complete vision of where he wanted to go, where he wanted to
Yeah.
take things, the sort of steps necessary to get good talent.
Mhm.
Um, Although it's the FDA group, and they had at the beginning some ex-FDA consultants, people
Yeah.
that actually worked for the agency. He wasn't focused entirely on just ex-FDA people. He was, focused on people that had that could provide a broad range of information and competency to
Yeah.
his growing company.
Right.
And I think he's maintained that very well. If you know how to do your job and you can work with people, I think Nick rightfully recruits people like that to assist.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's probably why we've had such a great relationship with you is you kind of embody kind of our standards here at the FDA group. I say that all the time. I reach out to you often for projects for that
Yeah,
reason. So if you
that's
can, I was just,
appreciated.
yeah, for sure. I was going to ask if you could maybe just kind of give, for those who don't know, just kind of a brief overview on your background and how you came to
Sure.
specialize in your current area of expertise.
Yeah. So, I'm a scientist. I mean, I'm trained as, PhD level scientist, and there's all sorts of jokes. We can actually walk and chew gum at the same time, but like anything, it's part of education. I got a PhD. I did, biological sciences, biochemistry. I did a postdoc at the VA in St. Louis. I was a member of the VA group and had a joint appointment to the Department of Internal Medicine at St. Louis University back in the early 1980s after my PhD.
Okay.
And each step along the way there, first you get into a laboratory situation and you don't know anything. You take some classes and then they say, okay, do science. Then you kind of get your degree or diploma and then they say, okay, get a job. And there's a half step there of becoming a postdoc. So you learn more about the trade of science, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's a point at which you make a decision. Do I go into academia and teach, get a laboratory, get grants, teach, go in that direction, or find a job in uh, the business world, and I was fortunate. I think I was hired by Abbott Laboratories,
Mhm.
which at the time was the world's, I think there were seven divisions at Abbott. And at the time, the diagnostics division of Abbott, where I ended up, was the world's largest diagnostics manufacturer, largest company. One division of Abbott was the world's largest medical diagnostics company.
Wow.
And it was just amazing to work there.
Yeah.
Um, and my job, I went into what they call division R&D. It was to create patents, to come up with
Okay.
ideas and science. I did a lot of work with self-performing assays. Right now we think of that as the pregnancy tests and things like that. But at the
Mhm.
time, it was laminar flow was quite new.
Yeah.
They had dipsticks like pH sticks in the past, but when you have flow of, say, blood,
Yeah.
you have to have segments because you have to remove the red blood cells. There has to be a way to do that.
Okay.
Then you have to pull the plasma out, and then that has to solubilize the reagents in order because I did a lot of antibody-based assays. So first you have to have, you're building sandwiches of molecules. So there was pretty intense science in there. We did a lot of fluid dynamics and
Yeah.
things like that. And then you have to figure out if it's manufacturable. What you
Right.
can do in a laboratory isn't necessarily something that you can manufacture. And
True.
one project I was on, which was really cool, we had a subsurface flow. We created a few layers. You put your urine sample, for instance, at one end, and
Hmm.
I had a 15-second pregnancy test.
I think we may have
And
lost visual here. I don't, sorry to
whoa, I'm
interrupt.
sorry.
May have
Uh,
lost camera there.
There, I apologize. I touched
It
something and it
works.
went away. Um, but yeah, so I had a 15-second pregnancy test with the small group I had. It was
Yeah.
subsurface flow, so it came up through the middle of the matrix and it went out radially. So you
Okay.
could have multiple controls around the edge.
Right.
And you could have a calibration, you could have controls in place. It was really inventive with the people I work with. So, I
Yeah.
learned. I didn't just follow what I was doing because, as a PhD, they say you develop expertise in one area.
Hmm. Hmm.
That can be a good thing. It can be a dead end for, your career.
True.
Here, I was introduced to engineering concepts, all sorts of, fun things,
True.
technically fun things. And I learned to integrate the things that I was learning to make something that was practicable for others to use. And then, kind of based on your question, where I went after that was I worked in a business unit. I did develop drugs of abuse and toxicology assays with large clinical analyzers. That was kind of fun. I learned a bit about management during doing that.
Yeah.
And then in 1999, there was a consent decree that Abbott entered with the FDA.
Okay.
And that pretty much changed everybody. People lost their jobs that they were doing. They were now sucked into this maelstrom of, uh, it was just upended. I mean, I remember the president of the division called all managers at a certain grade and above, like the night before, and he said, "We're going to have something from the FDA tomorrow. We have no idea what it is."
Oh, wow.
And it was, in fact, a consent decree. And that was 3.5 years of people being on 24/7 notice. And I was one of 14 people. At that point, Abbott had maybe 37,000 people worldwide. And I was one of 14 process validation managers assigned to get a letter of substantial compliance from the agency. So that's
Wow.
when I learned what the FDA was and
Yeah.
how things are done.
No
So
pressure.
that's kind of my story.
No, that's
You
awesome.
know, it was a larger team, but it was an important thing for the company to come through that. And we did.
No, that's great. And it sounds like, coming out of school and going into the workforce, you had an opportunity really to see it all kind of early on, and then also have an element of creativity, which
Yeah.
in your role, which is seems it kind of goes with your personality from what I know of you.
Well,
You
thank
kind
you.
of do have a creative, unique outlook on things. So it seems like you were able to kind of do the scientific stuff, but also have an element of creativity that may have, shaped
Yeah.
your
I,
journey.
and I've been fortunate. I'm not unique. A number of the people I've met along the way are just like that. We have
Mhm.
wonderful discussions. Certainly, the people at Abbott. I mean, the
Sure.
engineers, the scientists. We all had, different ways of coming about things. We
Sure.
shared a common vision. We wanted to do cool stuff. We wanted to be robust, and it's a testament to Abbott also, and other larger companies. That's what that screening processes, the interview process.
Hmm.
Who do you want working for you? Why do you want those people there? And it's goes back to the first question you asked about, how I felt about the FDA group. I mean, that's Nick's vision. He wants people who can um, continue in the future. I mean, people are really good at thinking what things can be in the future, but when you really try to ask them how far in advance is that future, a
Hmm.
year, 6 months, 2 years, 10-year goals are really nice to have, but things change so much. 5 years ago, who would have thought AI would have such an imprint on everything?
Absolutely.
So, what you need, I believe, are people who can adjust rapidly. They don't say, "Oh, I don't know this, I can't do it." It's like, "Oh, I don't know this, let me find out and figure out how to use it to advantage." And
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing. I think we don't always want to be changing midstream, but that's how the world is right now. I mean,
Sure.
some of the some of the stuff I talk about with people, I kind of have fun when I do a lot of audits, and
Yeah.
I'll talk to some of the people and I'll ask them, do you know what a mimeograph machine is?
Right.
And they're like, no.
Right.
Have you ever used a rotary telephone? No. I think I've seen one, but I don't
Right.
think I've ever used one. And what you learn, okay, so that's kind of fun. It's nostalgic. But
Mhm.
in the period of time in the last 50 years, if you look back to what's changed, we went from completely analog ways of doing things in the laboratory. I mean, the way in the 1980s, 70s, we were doing integration of peaks from HPLC. We would actually get a printout, not even a printout from a computer, but you'd have a pen trace on a piece of paper. And what
Right.
you'd do is you'd select your peak and you'd cut it out and weigh it on the balance. And that's how you integrated the information, the data. So if you had more weight in this peak versus that peak, you had a relative um, peak area that you could use, and that's the way we publish. That's the way we did the calculations. We didn't have the computer technology we had now. I learned on Fortran and an IBM mainframe computer with punch cards. I still have my slide rule, you know.
Really.
Um, but back then, who would have envisioned that you'd have more computing capability in the palm of your hand, literally in a phone,
Yes.
as Apollo did when it went to the moon? you
Sure.
know? And
Sure.
that's what I think a good scientist does. It's have a goal, and then figure out as you're going along what's the best way to achieve the goal. And it may change. And in fact, I've seen in my lifetime it changes substantially. And
Yeah.
it's all good. But if you're, you know, completely focused on doing things in one way of doing things, the only way to do it is this way because somebody taught me to do it that way, it's going to be very difficult for you to advance and provide good service to people that need it.
Absolutely. No, I,
Anyway,
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, I wanted to get a sense of, because you've been consulting over 30 years now, right? Because I guess you started
no, I probably more like 15 or 16 years because I
15 or
had
16.
I was at Abbott for a long time and I
Okay.
began
Okay.
after Abbott.
So you started consulting about 15 or 16 years ago. Okay. So over your time as a consultant, right? When you're working with firms on projects, is there anything specific that you're looking for in that partnership, in that relationship with those consulting firms? Anything that you're kind of, keying in on in terms of how you're, what you're looking for, I guess, as a consultant in those
So are
firms?
you talking about working with the firm
So
that I contract to or working with the customer of the firm I'm contracting with?
well, both, right? Because
Okay,
the initial relationship starts with the firm, right? So with the FDA group,
right,
and then obviously the client companies that we
right.
put you on. So just kind of wanted to get an idea and a sense of
Yeah,
your approach on that.
yeah. Okay, so the way I would state it is I'm going to someone's home. If I'm a consultant, I'm being asked into someone's home,
Mhm.
and you behave as a guest in that home.
Yeah, yeah,
So, for instance, if the FDA group asks me to work on a project and interview with a client, and then I get the work,
yes,
I always have to understand and make it clear I'm a guest. I'm not here to be rude. I'm not here to put anyone on the spot. I'm here to solve an issue. It may be a problem, it may not be. But I'm not here to say you did wrong. You should have done that.
right,
It's already tense enough. And my clients, and there's two clients at that point. There's the FDA group, and then there's their client.
sure,
They're there because this is their livelihood. They get paid because they're successful doing what they do. And at this point, when you have to call in a consultant, that success hasn't come easily. There's something wrong.
right,
And we need to understand why, not necessarily who, but why. And that's the way I approach it, which is I'm a guest. I have a certain ability to assist, but I have to be part of a team. I
Yeah.
have to know that they have my back. And what that means is if I need other resources, if I get to a point where I've identified what an issue or a source of the issue is, but I can't resolve it myself, that happens sometimes. I focus a lot on GMP,
So,
technical GMP.
yeah.
If it's a clinical issue, I have to be comfortable being able to say, look, we need a consultant that does clinical all the time.
Right. Right.
I don't,
Right.
but
Right.
I've identified it, and I don't do anybody any good by guessing at that point. That's
Absolutely.
not what anybody's asking me to do.
Yeah.
They're asking me to identify a problem and resolve it if possible.
Yeah.
I am very cautious to be sure that I don't say this person did that or that person did that. It's never, it's a system. It's absolutely a system. If a person made a mistake, there's a manager somewhere there, there's training behind it. You have to look at the whole thing when that happens. It's not a single person. Uh,
Right.
okay, rare instances when somebody purposely does something, very rare.
Sure.
But if it's day-to-day stuff and they have an observation from the agency or a warning letter, it's a systematic thing. And that's where someone with the background, breadth of background can come in and kind of tie together things that maybe aren't obvious
Right.
or obviously aren't obvious because they have an issue. And that's where I find that working with people and gaining their trust, and it's hard. I mean, you have to be sure that these people have done the best they can and they still have an issue.
Right.
You need to be empathetic to that. You need to work with the people and resolve the problem. You
Right.
can't fix the people in that regard, but you can say, look, here's the issue. Kind of comes down to some better training. Let's figure out where the gaps are. And I try to keep it fairly neutral in that regard going through it because I don't want to be in a situation, and I've been in those situations where I had an owner in an audit once say, I'm going to fire that quality manager. When
Mm.
we're back from uh, this part of the audit, when he
Yeah.
comes in, I am firing him right now. And I'm like, oh my goodness, no. He
Right.
did
Right. Right.
this good, this well, that well. I was here last year. They did these things well. We have an issue here, which is it's important, but you have the right guy to do it because all the other things that weren't going right, he's fixed.
Sure.
And so you talk that person down from that. Don't make rapid changes, emotionally. And
Right. Right.
anyway, I hope I answered your question, but I
No,
think
absolutely.
realizing your role as a guest in this,
Hmm.
it brings a certain degree of you have to approach the issues cautiously, get to the root cause, avoid the personnel stuff that goes on, in my opinion.
No, I think that's a great way of putting it. And I wish every auditor had that same approach. And most do. Most of the ones that we work with the most
Mhm.
um are similar in that way. Um, because I mean, if they're reaching out, they obviously care about
Yeah.
their program being successful, right? So we're not there to judge, we're there to help and assist, and I
Right.
think you nailed that. Um, I would ask this, if you kind of being that you've worked with other consulting firms, I mean, what would you say kind of sets the FDA group apart from maybe some of the others that you've come in contact with?
Well, first, there's this type of interaction. The FDA group is talking to its consultants. They're trying to learn how to do better. That's what our session now is about.
Absolutely.
Um, and I'm not saying that other groups don't do that, but that seems to set it apart. If I need to, I can send an email to the CEO of the FDA group, Nick Campman, and
Yeah.
get a response. Other companies, they're more structured. You don't go over somebody's head. There's, whatever's going on. I
Right.
have never seen that with the FDA group. I hope it never happens because at the end of the day, it's the FDA group and we need to be supportive of one another. I have good relationships with the product managers. You and I are on, we've been on a couple of projects together. The end result is it's a team, even taking it one step further, it's a big family that
Absolutely.
tries to get things done well and relies on one another to do that. And that really does set it apart. And it's not just because I'm working with you now. It's because I have not been asked by other consulting groups, which are good. I have, excellent interactions to sit down and speak about what makes them better, what makes them different. This is
Sure.
unique to me, and I think it's a positive way of being unique. And all the people I've worked with at the FDA group share this attitude. It's a positive, unique attitude to do things well, to do things better, focus on the customer, and it's not just words, it's actions. It's there are plenty of meetings. You can get in touch with the CEO, you can talk to other people. People will send emails back right away. You're never left hanging, which occasionally does happen in the business world. It's important
Yeah.
to you, but not important to the other person, and it gets lost. And meanwhile, you're kind of sitting there with the customer and trying to figure out how do I fix this, and I'm not getting the support, right?
Yeah.
But that has not happened with the FDA group, and I don't see it ever happening. It's just not in the DNA of the FDA group, if you will.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And being an employee here, I feel the same way as you. There is a family uh, element to what we do, and the fact that that has kind of made its way down to our consultants like yourself, and they're adopting that as part of their practice. That means everything to us, and I know it means the world to Nick because, as you mentioned, this is his vision and his leadership and his approach to how things get done. It creates, it basically creates the environment.
Mhm.
So it starts at the top. And
Yeah.
but no, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Um, I know we are coming close here to, and I want to be mindful of your time, but if you could give advice to someone that was looking to kind of maybe get into your field or become an auditor,
Mhm.
what advice would you give that person?
Yeah. So fortunately, I do more than auditing, which is great, but you need to really ask yourself, what do I do well? And that's hard. It's really hard to do because the question you're going to be asked when you contact the FDA group is, what do you consult with? What do you
Mhm,
consult in?
mhm.
What
Yeah,
areas are you good at? And you can't say everything. You can't say, I'm not sure. You have to really know yourself, and you need to be, we learn as we go along. So that answer will change as you go through your career. But you should be able to be knowledgeable and be able to express. And in my case, I do a lot of statistics. I mean, that's what I did a lot at, Abbott, at other companies where I work with them. I understand statistics, and I've converted that into understanding quality statistics. I understand the regulation, and that comes from my work under the consent decree. And then that was neat because through another firm, I actually became a contractor to the FDA,
right,
and I
right.
was helping them do investigations and finding root causes that they didn't see. And
Yep.
actually, I was able to marry the statistical stuff with
Mhm, mhm.
the documentation I was sent. So I built a reputation, but I built it on the blocks of what I knew. So it's depth and breadth, but be certain of what you're able to do, because you're going to be asked that, and then you're going to be put into a situation where now you're representing the FDA group. And if you said, I can do all these things,
Right.
and you're sitting there Googling how to do it, which doesn't happen, but that's a problem. But
Sure.
if you're put in the position of helping the client, and then you go and you Google certain specific things for the FDA and look for warning letters and know where to go and know how to flesh it out, and you're an expert in that and very knowledgeable, then you walk in the next day and say, listen, I heard what you were saying yesterday. Here's 3 warning letters, and
Mhm.
they had very similar issues to you, and here's what the FDA expectation is. And
Right.
so you need to know where to look. you need to realize you're the expert. You need to be humble about it, and you need to present it in a way that you teach. You are teaching these people, because you're not going to be there after your 3 weeks is up, or 2 months, whatever the project length is.
Right.
It does have an end. It does not help the FDA group or the client for you to walk out with them being as unknowledgeable about what happened as when you began. They'll come back. They will. There'll be other issues, and they'll remember that you helped them through this one, and they'll remember that and come back and contact you. So, in short, be expert and know what you're expert in, and keep expanding on that. It's you'll build here and you build there, and it becomes what you do, and it's also the manner in which you do it and present it.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
That absolutely answers my question. That's great advice. A lot of wisdom. Every time we speak, I learn something new. And that's great, man. And I just, Neal, I can't thank you enough on behalf of everyone at the FDA group. We talk about availability and responsiveness. There's not a time where I reach out to you where you're not responsive and more than willing to help on various topics and various projects that we have going. And I want to personally thank you for that, and being easy to work with. I can't tell you how far that goes in this industry. Just being easy to work with. You definitely are. And as I mentioned before, a wealth of knowledge, a lot of wisdom every time we speak. And I really thank you for your time today. And I hope you have a great holiday season. And send us some pictures of the farm, please. Can we get some pictures of the farm? I just need some of the horses. I know you got Clydesdales. We could, that's a whole nother topic.
We should set up time to just go over that. But but that's the other thing. If I can just, so thank you so much for the kind words and the ability or the opportunity to do this. But I think anything that I would say to a consultant would be, you cannot be on 24/7 with this stuff. You've got to have a real work-life balance, because you're going to be traveling. Consulting is about always looking for another job. I mean, when you think about it, you're always interviewing for another job. You don't have that when you go into industry, for instance, or academia. So you have to have a mindset. You're always sending out your resume, updating your resume, because you're always looking for another job.
Very true.
But have that work-life balance, because you can just burn out, especially travel now. I mean, I was traveling with audits for a while. I was doing 2-3 different cities a week. I'd come home Saturday night and leave Sunday afternoon, and it started to burn me out. It wasn't good. It was important work, but you let other people down when you just can't focus anymore. So be wary of that. Sometimes you have to say, no, I can't take this job. I have a couple other things to do, but it's all good. And I reflect back your words to me. I enjoy working with you personally. I think we have a great relationship. We have a couple of projects with other people that I feel the same, and it goes right up to Nick Catman. There's never an issue with the FDA group where someone says, I just don't want to talk to you. It's how can we work this out? How can we work together is always what I hear. So I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. You are more than welcome. Neal, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And as I said before, I hope you have a happy holidays, and we will talk soon, very soon. Actually.
You too. Absolutely. That's right. Anyway, take care. We'll see you, Jason.
Take care, Neal.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks.